Welcome to Stoic Vivu, where ancient wisdom meets modern life. I'm here to help you discover how timeless Stoic philosophy can transform your relationship with money, success, and true prosperity. Our mission is simple. Take the profound teachings of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus and show you exactly how to apply them to build genuine wealth in today's world. What if I told you that the greatest philosophers in history weren't just thinkers sitting in ivory towers? Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. Even Epictetus, though he started as a slave, understood the secrets of true prosperity. These weren't people who preached poverty while living in luxury. They were individuals who mastered both material success and spiritual richness. Here's what makes Stoic wealth different from everything else you've heard about money. It's not just about accumulating dollars in your bank account. The ancient Stoics discovered something revolutionary. They learned to be wealthy in every sense of the word. They understood that real prosperity means having enough money to live freely while never becoming enslaved by the pursuit of more. Most financial advice today treats money as either the root of all evil or the solution to every problem. The Stoics knew better. They saw money as what they called a preferred indifferent, something useful when you have it, but not essential for a meaningful life. This perspective allowed them to pursue wealth strategically without losing their souls in the process. Today, you're going to learn 9 specific secrets that these ancient masters used to build lasting prosperity. These aren't theoretical concepts or philosophical abstractions. They're practical, actionable habits you can start implementing immediately to transform your financial life. You'll discover why Marcus Aurelius practiced daily gratitude for his wealth, how Seneca evaluated every morning whether his time was being spent wisely, and why Epictetus taught that knowing when you have enough is the key to unlimited abundance. Each secret builds on the last, creating a complete system for achieving both financial freedom and inner peace. Whether you're struggling to pay bills, building your first business, or already successful but feeling empty despite your achievements, these ancient principles will show you a better way. You'll learn to make money decisions that increase your freedom rather than creating new forms of bondage. You'll discover how to protect and grow your assets while maintaining the generosity and character that make life truly worthwhile. The Stoics proved that you don't have to choose between being wealthy and being wise, between financial success and spiritual fulfillment. They showed us that true prosperity comes from understanding what genuinely matters, making smart decisions with your resources, and never forgetting that money is a tool to serve your values, not replace them. Are you ready to build your own wealthy life using wisdom that has guided successful people for over 2,000 years? Let's begin this journey together. Secret number 1. Practice daily wealth gratitude like Marcus Aurelius. Imagine that you're sitting in your apartment in Manhattan, scrolling through social media at 7 a.m. when that familiar feeling hits. Everyone else seems to be living their best life, posting about their promotions, new cars, exotic vacations. Meanwhile, you're calculating whether you can afford both groceries and your gym membership this month. The comparison trap has caught you again, and suddenly your decent job, your safe neighborhood, and your reliable health feel like nothing at all. This is exactly the moment when Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, would have practiced his first daily habit. Before he made a single decision about governing an empire, before he dealt with political crises or military campaigns, he reminded himself of everything he already possessed. Not to become complacent, but to see clearly from a position of strength rather than scarcity. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his personal journal, which we now call the Meditations, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own." But before he focused on potential challenges, he spent time acknowledging his advantages. The emperor understood something that escapes most of us. Gratitude isn't just a feel-good practice. It's a wealth-building strategy. When you begin each day aware of what you already have, you make financial decisions from abundance rather than fear. You negotiate salaries from confidence rather than desperation. You invest with patience rather than panic. Here's how to implement Marcus Aurelius's daily wealth gratitude practice in your modern life. Each morning, before checking your phone or diving into your to-do list, spend 5 minutes identifying 3 specific forms of wealth you already possess. Not generic statements like, "I'm grateful for my health," but precise acknowledgments like, "I'm grateful my body carried me through a full workday yesterday without pain." The first category is your intellectual wealth. You possess knowledge, skills, and experiences that have monetary value. Maybe you're fluent in 2 languages, understand social media marketing, or know how to calm down angry customers. These aren't just personal qualities. They're marketable assets that can generate income. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that his education and judgment were forms of wealth that no external force could steal. The second category is your relationship wealth. Every genuine connection you have represents potential opportunities, support systems, and collaborative possibilities. That colleague who always says good morning, the neighbor who borrows your tools, the friend who calls when they need advice. These relationships form an invisible network of mutual aid that has real economic value. The Stoic emperor knew that his ability to inspire loyalty and trust was more valuable than gold. The third category is your circumstantial wealth. This includes your location, your citizenship, your access to education, your legal protections, and your basic infrastructure. You flip a switch and the lights turn on. You turn a handle and clean water flows. You walk outside and laws protect your safety. These aren't small conveniences. They're massive advantages that billions of people lack. Marcus Aurelius didn't practice gratitude to become passive or satisfied with mediocrity. He practiced it to see reality clearly. When you acknowledge what you already have, you stop making financial decisions from a place of imagined poverty. You realize that even if you're not where you want to be financially, you're probably not starting from zero. This clarity transforms your approach to earning money. Instead of desperately chasing any opportunity, you can evaluate options strategically. Instead of accepting unfair terms because you feel powerless, you negotiate from a position of existing strength. Instead of spending money to fill emotional voids, you purchase things that genuinely add value to an already valuable life. Consider this: when you feel poor, you often make poor decisions. You take the first job offer instead of waiting for the right one. You buy cheap items that break quickly instead of investing in quality. You avoid asking for raises because you feel lucky to have any job at all. But when you recognize your existing wealth, you make choices that build on your advantages rather than compensate for imagined weaknesses. The most successful people throughout history understood this principle. They didn't start with more money than everyone else. They started with a clearer perception of their existing resources. Marcus Aurelius inherited the throne, but he also inherited massive problems: plagues, wars, and political instability. What made him effective wasn't his circumstances, but his ability to see opportunities within challenges. Your daily gratitude practice should end with one specific action step. After identifying your 3 forms of wealth, choose one way to leverage that wealth today. If you're grateful for your communication skills, send that networking email. If you're grateful for your reliable transportation, consider a side hustle that requires mobility. If you're grateful for your analytical mind, look for problems you could solve profitably. Building on this foundation of recognized wealth, we can now turn to how the Stoics measured the true value of their most precious resource, not money, but time itself. Remember, you're not practicing gratitude to feel better about having less. You're practicing gratitude to see clearly how much you already have to work with. That clarity is the first secret to building lasting prosperity. Secret number 2. Start each morning with the Stoic time value assessment. You're standing in your kitchen in Los Angeles at 6:30 a.m., coffee in hand, staring at 2 job offers on your phone. The first pays $120,000 annually but requires a brutal commute and 60-hour weeks at a company whose values make your stomach turn. The second offers $85,000 at a mission-driven startup where you'd work with people you respect, learn skills you actually want, and have time for the creative projects that energize you. Most people would tell you to take the money. Seneca would tell you to calculate the real cost. Lucius Aeneas Seneca, advisor to emperors and one of Rome's wealthiest citizens, spent his mornings performing what we can call the Stoic time value assessment. Before making any decision about how to spend his day, he asked himself a fundamental question that most people never consider. What is my time actually worth? And am I trading it wisely? Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long if you know how to use it." This wasn't philosophical poetry, it was practical economics. Seneca understood that time is the only truly finite resource, and every hour you spend earning money is an hour you can't spend on anything else. Here's the morning assessment that Seneca would perform, adapted for your modern life. Before you check emails, before you dive into your daily tasks, spend 10 minutes calculating the true value exchange you're making with your time. This isn't about tracking every minute obsessively. It's about making conscious choices rather than defaulting to whatever pays the most upfront. First, calculate your real hourly wage. Take your annual income and divide it by the total hours you actually spend on work-related activities. Include your commute, the time you spend thinking about work problems at home, the hours you spend on optional work events, and the mental energy you expend dealing with work stress. If you earn $80,000 per year but spend 55 hours per week on work-related activities, you're earning about $28 per hour, not the $38 you might assume. Seneca went further than simple math. He asked himself whether each hour of work was making him wiser, stronger, or more capable of serving others. If a business opportunity would consume his time without developing his character or contributing to the common good, he considered it a poor investment regardless of the monetary return. Next, assess the hidden costs of your current time allocation. You're not just trading time for money, you're trading energy, relationships, health, and personal growth opportunities. That high-paying job that exhausts you might prevent you from developing skills that could lead to better opportunities later. The demanding schedule that impresses your boss might cost you the relationships that actually support your long-term success. Consider this scenario. You're offered freelance work that pays $75 per hour, but it's mindless data entry that teaches you nothing and leaves you drained. Meanwhile, you could spend those same hours learning a new skill, building relationships in your industry, or working on a personal project that might not pay immediately but could transform your career trajectory. Seneca would choose the investment in future capability over the immediate cash. The Stoic time value assessment also includes what economists call opportunity cost, what you're giving up when you choose one option over another. When you say yes to working late for overtime pay, you're saying no to time with family, personal projects, rest, or learning opportunities. Seneca regularly evaluated whether his current activities were preventing him from pursuing more meaningful or profitable endeavors. Here's how to implement this assessment practically. Each morning, identify your 3 most important time investments for the day. Not your busiest activities or most urgent tasks, but the activities most likely to create lasting value. Then, honestly evaluate whether your scheduled activities align with these priorities or contradict them. Seneca discovered that many apparently profitable activities were actually destroying wealth when viewed from a time perspective. Meetings that accomplished nothing, projects that taught him no new skills, social obligations that drained his energy without building meaningful relationships. These were all expensive ways to spend his most valuable resource. The time value assessment becomes especially crucial when making career decisions. That promotion that increases your salary by 20% but doubles your stress and cuts your free time in half might actually decrease your overall wealth when you factor in the cost to your health, relationships, and personal development. Seneca also understood the compounding effect of time investments. Hours spent learning compound into expertise. Hours spent building genuine relationships compound into opportunities. Hours spent maintaining your health compound into sustained energy and productivity. But hours spent on activities that neither pay well nor develop your capabilities compound into nothing. The goal isn't to monetize every moment or turn yourself into a productivity machine. Seneca valued leisure, friendship, and contemplation highly. The goal is to make conscious choices about how you spend your irreplaceable time rather than drifting into patterns that don't serve your long-term interests. When you master the Stoic time value assessment, you start making decisions that build both immediate financial stability and long-term prosperity. You recognize when a lower-paying opportunity might actually be more valuable because it develops skills, relationships, or reputation that will pay dividends for years. This wisdom naturally guides us toward the next crucial practice: understanding exactly when you have accumulated enough wealth to feel truly satisfied and secure. The morning time value assessment isn't about becoming obsessive or turning every decision into a calculation. It's about developing the clarity to recognize when you're investing your most precious resource wisely versus when you're simply reacting to whatever demands the loudest attention. Secret number 3, use the ancient enough test every week. You're walking through your neighborhood in Chicago on a Saturday afternoon when you notice your neighbor's new Tesla gleaming in the driveway. Your reliable Honda gets you everywhere you need to go, but suddenly it feels inadequate. By the time you reach home, you're browsing car websites and calculating loan payments. Your phone buzzes with a promotional email about a luxury watch sale. Then your college friend posts vacation photos from Bali. Within an hour, everything you own feels insufficient. and you're mentally spending money you don't have on things you didn't want until you saw someone else had them. This is precisely the moment when Seneca would have applied his most powerful wealth-building technique, the ancient enough test. As one of Rome's richest citizens, Seneca faced constant temptation to acquire bigger estates, finer wines, more exotic luxuries. Instead of resisting these desires through willpower alone, he developed a systematic weekly practice to evaluate whether his current resources truly satisfied his actual needs. Seneca wrote, "If you don't regard what you have as enough, you will never be happy even if you rule the entire world." He wasn't advocating for settling for less than you deserve. He was pointing out that without a clear understanding of enough, you'll chase an eternally moving finish line, making financial decisions based on comparison and insecurity rather than genuine value. The weekly enough test works like this. Every Sunday evening, before you plan the upcoming week's activities and expenses, spend 20 minutes honestly evaluating your current level of satisfaction across the essential areas of life. This isn't about convincing yourself to want less. It's about developing clarity around what actually improves your daily experience versus what you think you should want. Start with your basic security needs. Do you have reliable shelter, adequate food, and reasonable safety? If yes, acknowledge that you've achieved something that millions of people lack. This isn't to make you feel guilty about wanting more, but to establish a foundation of security from which you can make strategic rather than desperate decisions. Next, evaluate your comfort level. Are your living conditions pleasant enough that you can focus on work, relationships, and personal growth without constant distraction from physical discomfort? Can you invite friends over without embarrassment? Do you have reliable transportation to opportunities? If these boxes are checked, you've reached a level of comfort that many wealthy people throughout history never achieved. The third category is your growth potential. Do you have access to learning opportunities, whether through books, courses, mentors, or experiences? Can you afford to take calculated risks on new ventures or career changes? Do you have enough financial breathing room to invest time in developing skills rather than just surviving day to day? Growth level wealth means you can make decisions based on long-term potential rather than immediate necessity. Here's where Seneca's insight becomes revolutionary. He discovered that most dissatisfaction comes not from lacking these essentials, but from comparing your security, comfort, and growth potential to other people's apparent advantages. The enough test includes a weekly comparison audit, not to judge others, but to catch yourself when external influences are distorting your perception of your actual situation. Seneca regularly reminded himself that even emperors dealt with problems he didn't have. Marcus Aurelius had unlimited money but couldn't trust anyone's motives. Wealthy merchants had financial freedom but constantly worried about political stability affecting their trade. Every life includes trade-offs, and every level of wealth creates new challenges alongside new opportunities. The practical application requires brutal honesty about your actual daily experience. If upgrading your car would genuinely improve your life, perhaps your current vehicle is unreliable and causing real stress, then it might be worth pursuing. But if you're considering the upgrade primarily because it would change how others perceive you, you're probably failing the test. Seneca also applied the enough test to income goals. Rather than always seeking the highest possible salary, he asked whether additional income would actually solve problems he currently faced or simply create new ones. More money often means more responsibility, longer hours, higher stress, and increased lifestyle inflation that can leave you feeling less secure than before. The weekly practice includes projecting forward. If you acquired whatever you're currently wanting, how would your typical Tuesday afternoon actually change? If the answer is not much, you've probably identified a want that's driven by external pressure rather than genuine need. If the answer involves meaningful improvements to your daily experience, security, or growth potential, it might be worth pursuing strategically. Seneca discovered that people who consistently apply the enough test actually become wealthier over time, not poorer. When you're not constantly fighting dissatisfaction with your current situation, you make better financial decisions. You negotiate from strength rather than desperation. You invest in things that actually add value rather than just temporarily relieve insecurity. The enough test also prevents lifestyle inflation from destroying your financial progress. As your income increases, instead of automatically expanding your expenses to match, you can consciously decide which upgrades genuinely improve your life and which ones just consume more resources without adding real value. Most importantly, when you know what enough looks like for you personally, you can pursue additional wealth without anxiety or obsession. Everything beyond your enough point becomes a bonus rather than a necessity, which dramatically improves both your financial decision-making and your daily peace of mind. Consequently, this leads us to the crucial practice of building patience for long-term wealth accumulation, since you're no longer driven by urgent dissatisfaction with your current situation. The enough test isn't about lowering your standards or accepting mediocrity. It's about developing the clarity to distinguish between upgrades that actually improve your life and upgrades that just feed comparison-based insecurity. Secret number 4. Build patience through daily progress tracking. You're sitting in a coffee shop in Austin, staring at your laptop screen with mounting frustration. 6 months ago, you launched what you thought would be a quick path to financial freedom. A consulting business helping local restaurants improve their online presence. You expected to be fully booked within 3 months, but you're still struggling to land your third client. Your savings account is shrinking. Your family keeps asking when you'll get a real job. And every business guru on social media seems to be making millions effortlessly. You're ready to quit and accept defeat. This is exactly when the ancient Stoics would have applied their most counterintuitive wealth-building strategy, slowing down to speed up through systematic patience cultivation. Marcus Aurelius, who spent decades building and maintaining the Roman Empire, understood that impatience doesn't just make you miserable. It makes you poor through hasty decisions and premature abandonment of promising ventures. The Stoic philosophers discovered something that modern psychology has confirmed. Our brains are terrible at estimating how long complex projects actually take. We consistently underestimate both the time required and the obstacles we'll encounter. This isn't a character flaw. It's a cognitive bias that affects everyone from seasoned entrepreneurs to Roman emperors. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his personal notes, "Confine yourself to the present." He wasn't advocating for ignoring the future, but for focusing your energy on what you can control today rather than becoming paralyzed by the gap between your current situation and your ultimate goal. This principle becomes crucial when building wealth because financial success almost always takes longer than anticipated. Here's how to implement the Stoic daily progress tracking system. Each evening, spend 10 minutes documenting 3 specific categories of progress, regardless of how small they might seem. This isn't about productivity optimization or hitting arbitrary metrics. It's about training your brain to recognize forward movement even when results aren't immediately visible. First, track your learning progress. What new information did you acquire today that makes you more capable of achieving your financial goals? Maybe you learned how to write better emails to potential clients, discovered a new marketing strategy, or gained insight into your industry's pricing standards. Epictetus taught that education is the only investment that can never be taken away from you, making daily learning accumulation one of the most reliable wealth-building activities. Second, track your relationship progress. Which connections did you strengthen or create today? Perhaps you had a meaningful conversation with a potential mentor, helped a colleague solve a problem, or simply maintained contact with someone in your network. The Stoics understood that wealth rarely comes from individual effort alone. It emerges from communities of mutual support and collaboration. Third, track your character progress. How did you handle setbacks, difficult people, or unexpected challenges today? Did you respond with wisdom rather than emotion? Did you maintain your principles under pressure? Did you choose long-term thinking over short-term gratification? Character development might seem unrelated to wealth building, but Marcus Aurelius knew that trustworthiness, resilience, and sound judgment are essential business assets. The power of this tracking system becomes apparent over time. When you're feeling discouraged about your apparent lack of progress, you can review weeks or months of small advances and see the substantial foundation you've actually built. What feels like stagnation in the moment reveals itself as steady development when viewed from a longer perspective. Marcus Aurelius faced this challenge constantly while managing an empire during the plague, war, and political upheaval. Progress felt impossibly slow, setbacks seemed to outnumber victories, and the scope of problems often appeared overwhelming. His daily reflection practice helped him recognize that meaningful change happens through accumulated small actions rather than dramatic breakthrough moments. The tracking system also helps you identify patterns in your progress cycles. You might notice that you learn most effectively in the mornings, build relationships more naturally in certain environments, or handle challenges better when you've had adequate rest. These insights allow you to structure your days for maximum progress rather than working against your natural rhythms. When facing major setbacks, losing a client, having a project fail, or encountering unexpected expenses, the progress tracking system provides perspective. You can see that setbacks are temporary interruptions in an overall upward trajectory rather than evidence that your efforts are futile. This perspective prevents the panic-driven decisions that often destroy promising ventures just before they would have succeeded. Patience becomes easier when you can measure progress objectively rather than relying on feelings. Emotions naturally fluctuate based on recent events, energy levels, and external circumstances. But documented evidence of consistent advancement provides a reliable foundation for continued effort even when motivation wavers. The Stoics also understood that patience isn't passive waiting. It's active persistence with realistic expectations. Your daily progress tracking should include both effort metrics and result metrics. You can control how many calls you make, how many skills you develop, and how many relationships you nurture. You cannot control how quickly these efforts produce visible financial returns. Marcus Aurelius regularly reminded himself that his role was to plant seeds conscientiously and tend them carefully, not to demand that they grow according to his preferred timeline. This perspective allowed him to maintain consistent effort without the emotional turbulence that comes from expecting immediate results. Building on this foundation of patient persistence, we can now explore how to create strategic financial independence that provides security while you pursue your long-term wealth-building goals. Daily progress tracking transforms impatience from a wealth-destroying force into productive energy channeled toward consistent advancement. When you can see evidence of forward movement, waiting becomes investing rather than suffering. Secret number 5. Create your personal financial freedom strategy. You're sitting in your cubicle in Seattle on a rainy Thursday afternoon, watching the clock crawl toward 5 p.m. Your dream of starting a photography business feels more distant than ever. Everyone tells you to quit your job and pursue your passion, to burn the boats and go all in. But you have rent to pay, student loans to service, and the realistic fear that your artistic vision might not immediately translate into grocery money. You feel trapped between playing it safe and taking the leap, wondering if you'll spend your entire life planning for a future that never arrives. This dilemma would have been familiar to Cato the Younger, the most principled of the Roman Stoics. Unlike other philosophers who inherited wealth or had patrons supporting their studies, Cato understood the practical challenge of maintaining your values while ensuring your basic needs were met. He developed what we can call the Stoic financial freedom strategy, a systematic approach to building security that enhances rather than compromises your ability to pursue meaningful work. Cato's insight was revolutionary for his time and remains so today. Financial independence isn't about accumulating enough money to never work again. It's about creating enough security to make choices based on your values rather than your fears. This distinction transforms how you approach both earning and spending money. Here's how to implement the Stoic financial freedom strategy in your modern life. The foundation is what Cato called earned independence. Using your current situation, however imperfect, as a platform for building the life you actually want rather than waiting for ideal conditions that may never arrive. First, reframe your current job as your personal trust fund. Instead of viewing employment as a trap that prevents you from pursuing your dreams, see it as a financial foundation that makes those dreams possible. Your salary isn't just covering your expenses. It's buying you time, learning opportunities, and the psychological freedom to take calculated risks with your creative or entrepreneurial pursuits. This perspective shift changes everything about how you approach your day job. Instead of doing the minimum required while mentally checked out, you extract maximum value from the experience. What skills are you developing that could transfer to your desired field? Which relationships could become valuable connections? How can you use your current role to build credibility, learn industry knowledge, or develop a track record of reliability? Cato understood that financial freedom requires multiple income streams, but not in the way most people imagine. Rather than trying to replace your primary income immediately, focus on building what the Stoics called preferred indifference, additional resources that enhance your security without creating new dependencies. Start by identifying ways to monetize skills you already possess. Perhaps you're excellent at organizing information, skilled at explaining complex concepts, or naturally good at helping people solve problems. These abilities can generate supplemental income through freelance work, consulting, or teaching, often using the same hours you might otherwise spend on entertainment or social media. The key is maintaining what Cato called strategic patience. Your side income doesn't need to replace your salary immediately. It needs to prove that you can create value outside your primary job and provide evidence that your skills have market demand. This proof becomes crucial for both your confidence and your practical planning. Cato also emphasized the importance of lifestyle design in achieving financial freedom. Most people increase their expenses in lockstep with their income, creating what economists call lifestyle inflation. The Stoic approach involves consciously choosing which improvements genuinely enhance your life versus which ones just consume more resources without adding real value. Calculate your true financial freedom number, not the amount needed to live lavishly, but the amount required to cover your essential expenses while pursuing work you find meaningful. This number is typically much lower than people assume, especially when you eliminate expenses driven by status anxiety rather than genuine preference. The Stoic financial freedom strategy includes what Cato called intelligent frugality. This isn't about depriving yourself of everything enjoyable, but about spending money deliberately on things that actually improve your daily experience while avoiding expenses that drain resources without adding lasting value. For example, you might choose to live in a smaller apartment to reduce housing costs, but invest in high-quality tools for your creative work. You might drive an older car to minimize transportation expenses, but budget for courses or workshops that develop your skills. The goal is to align your spending with your actual priorities rather than social expectations. As your alternative income streams grow and your expenses remain controlled, you reach what Cato called the choice point, the moment when you have enough financial security to make career decisions based on opportunity rather than necessity. This might mean negotiating for reduced hours at your current job while building your business, transitioning to part-time work, or eventually making a complete career change from a position of strength rather than desperation. The timeline for reaching this choice point varies dramatically based on your circumstances, but Cato emphasized that the process of building toward it improves your life immediately. When you know you're creating options for yourself, your current job becomes less stressful because it's temporary and strategic rather than permanent and desperate. Financial freedom also requires what the Stoics called negative visualization, regularly imagining how you would handle various setbacks or changes in your circumstances. If you lost your job tomorrow, how long could you survive on your savings? If your side business failed, what alternative approaches could you try? This planning isn't pessimistic. It's practical preparation that reduces anxiety and improves decision-making. With this foundation of strategic independence established, we can now explore how to ensure that money enhances rather than compromises your personal freedom and values. The Stoic financial freedom strategy transforms money from a source of anxiety into a tool for creating the life you actually want to live. Secret number 6. Practice the weekly money freedom check. You're sitting in a Miami conference room at 8 p.m. on a Friday, listening to your boss explain why the team needs to work through the weekend again. The six-figure salary seemed like freedom when you accepted the position, but now you realize you can't take vacation time without guilt, can't speak honestly about problems you see in the company, and can't pursue any interests that might compete with your total availability for work. Your expensive apartment, car payments, and lifestyle have created golden handcuffs that are surprisingly difficult to unlock. This scenario would have prompted Epictetus, who understood slavery more intimately than perhaps any philosopher in history, to perform his most crucial financial practice, the weekly money freedom check. Having experienced both literal bondage and eventual liberation, Epictetus developed a systematic way to evaluate whether your financial choices were increasing your autonomy or creating new forms of servitude. Epictetus taught, "No one can enslave you without your permission." This wasn't naive optimism from someone who had never faced real constraints. It was hard-won wisdom from a man who learned to distinguish between external circumstances and internal freedom. he discovered that many people who appear financially successful are actually trapped by their own choices, while others with modest means live with remarkable independence. The weekly money freedom check requires honest evaluation of how your financial decisions are affecting your ability to make choices based on your values rather than your obligations. This isn't about judging whether you have enough money, but about assessing whether money is serving your freedom or controlling your behavior. Every Sunday evening, before planning the upcoming week, spend 15 minutes examining the relationship between your financial situation and your personal autonomy. Start by identifying any financial obligations that significantly limit your choices. This includes obvious debts like credit cards and loans, but also subtler commitments like expensive recurring subscriptions, high fixed costs that require specific income levels, or lifestyle choices that demand constant attention to maintain. Epictetus would then ask himself a crucial question. If I needed to change my life direction tomorrow, pursue different work, move to a new city, or take time to care for family, how quickly could I adapt financially? The goal isn't to live in constant preparation for change, but to ensure that your financial structure enhances rather than restricts your ability to respond to opportunities or obligations. Next, evaluate what Epictetus called voluntary dependencies, financial commitments you've chosen that now influence your decision-making. Perhaps you've purchased a house with mortgage payments that require a specific income level, limiting your career flexibility. Maybe you've accepted stock options that vest over several years, making it financially painful to leave your job even if the work no longer aligns with your values. These commitments aren't inherently good or bad, but Epictetus emphasized the importance of making them consciously rather than drifting into situations where money makes your decisions for you. When you choose a financial obligation, you should understand exactly what freedoms you're trading and confirm that the exchange serves your long-term interests. The freedom check also includes examining how your income sources affect your autonomy. If all your money comes from a single employer, you're vulnerable to their changing priorities, economic conditions, or personality conflicts. Epictetus would have viewed this as unnecessarily risky dependence, even if the current income is substantial. Consider whether your work requires you to compromise values that matter to you. Can you speak honestly about problems you observe? Are you able to maintain relationships outside your professional network? Do you have time and energy for activities that fulfill you beyond earning money? If your financial needs force you to ignore your principles or neglect important relationships, you're paying a higher price than the obvious monetary costs. Epictetus particularly emphasized the hidden costs of lifestyle inflation. Each upgrade in your living situation, transportation, or entertainment creates new baseline expectations that can be difficult to reverse. This isn't an argument for living poorly, but for consciously choosing which improvements genuinely enhance your life versus which ones just consume more resources while creating new dependencies. The weekly check includes an honest assessment of your financial fears. What specifically worries you about money? Are these fears based on realistic risks or anxieties amplified by comparison to others? Epictetus found that many financial decisions are driven by imaginary catastrophes rather than practical planning, leading people to trade away significant freedom for security they don't actually need. One powerful exercise involves imagining how you would respond if your income decreased by 25% tomorrow. Which expenses would you eliminate first? How quickly could you adapt your lifestyle? This isn't pessimistic planning, it's building confidence in your ability to maintain autonomy even if circumstances change unexpectedly. Epictetus also evaluated what he called freedom-enhancing investments, expenses that increase your long-term independence even if they cost money upfront. Education that develops marketable skills, tools that improve your productivity, or emergency savings that provide decision-making flexibility all represent money spent to buy future freedom rather than present comfort. The goal of the weekly money freedom check isn't to eliminate all financial commitments or live in voluntary poverty. It's to ensure that your relationship with money supports your ability to live according to your values rather than forcing you to compromise them for economic security. When you regularly assess how your financial choices affect your autonomy, you make different decisions about earning, spending, and saving. You prioritize investments that enhance your independence over purchases that create new dependencies. You negotiate employment terms that preserve your flexibility rather than just maximizing immediate compensation. This awareness naturally leads us to the essential practice of protecting your financial assets through strategic diversification and risk management. The weekly money freedom check transforms your relationship with money from unconscious consumption to deliberate investment in the life you actually want to live. Secret number 7. Diversify using the Stoic risk assessment method. You're sitting in your home office in Denver, celebrating a breakthrough month in your consulting business. After 2 years of steady growth, you're finally earning more from your independent work than you ever made as an employee. The success feels intoxicating, and you're tempted to go all in, quit other income sources, invest all your savings back into the business, and bet everything on this momentum continuing indefinitely. Your confidence is high, your expertise is growing, and every business podcast tells you that successful entrepreneurs take bold risks. This moment of triumph is precisely when Seneca, despite being one of Rome's most successful businessmen, would have applied his most counterintuitive wealth protection strategy. Deliberate diversification driven not by fear, but by practical wisdom about the unpredictable nature of all human endeavors. Seneca managed vast business interests across the Roman Empire while serving as advisor to Emperor Nero. He understood that even the most promising ventures face unexpected challenges: natural disasters, political changes, economic shifts, or simple changes in consumer preferences. His approach to wealth protection wasn't based on pessimism, but on the realistic recognition that concentration of resources in a single area, however successful, creates unnecessary vulnerability. The Stoic risk assessment method starts with what Seneca called intelligent preparation for fortune's changes. This doesn't mean expecting failure, but acknowledging that external circumstances beyond your control can affect even the most well-managed enterprises. Your goal is to position yourself so that no single setback can destroy your overall financial security. Here's how to implement the Stoic diversification strategy in your modern financial life. Every quarter, conduct a comprehensive risk assessment across 4 categories: income sources, asset types, skill dependencies, and geographic exposure. This systematic review helps you identify dangerous concentrations before they become critical vulnerabilities. Start with income diversification. Seneca maintained multiple revenue streams not because he distrusted any particular business, but because he understood that different economic activities respond differently to changing conditions. If all your income depends on a single client, employer, or industry, you're essentially betting your financial security on factors you cannot control. The goal isn't to have dozens of small income sources, but to ensure that no single source represents more than 60% of your total earnings. This might mean maintaining part-time consulting while building a product business, keeping some employment income while developing investment returns, or creating both local and online revenue streams that serve different markets. Seneca particularly emphasized what we now call skill diversification. If your entire earning capacity depends on a single expertise, whether technical programming, creative design, or industry-specific knowledge, you're vulnerable to technological changes, market shifts, or simple changes in demand. The Stoic approach involves continuously developing complementary skills that could generate income if your primary expertise becomes less valuable. Consider your asset allocation using Seneca's principle of distributed security. This goes beyond the modern investment advice of spreading money across different stocks or funds. The Stoic approach includes diversifying across entirely different asset categories. Some money in liquid investments for flexibility, some in real estate for stability, some in business ventures for growth potential, and some in simple savings for security. The key insight from Seneca's business experience is that different types of assets protect against different types of risks. Stocks might grow rapidly during economic expansion but lose value during market downturns. Real estate might provide steady income but lack liquidity during emergencies. Business ownership might generate substantial returns but require active management that could become impossible due to health or family obligations. Seneca also practiced geographic diversification, maintaining business interests in different regions of the empire so that local disasters wouldn't destroy his entire portfolio. In modern terms, this might mean having some investments tied to your local economy and others connected to national or international markets, or maintaining professional relationships in multiple cities rather than depending entirely on your current location. The Stoic risk assessment includes what Seneca called capacity analysis, honestly evaluating your personal limitations and planning accordingly. If you're building wealth primarily through creative work, you need to acknowledge that creativity can be affected by health, energy levels, or simply natural cycles of inspiration. If your income depends on physical capabilities, you should plan for the possibility that injury or aging might affect your earning potential. This doesn't mean becoming paralyzed by imaginary catastrophes, but rather making prudent preparations that allow you to take calculated risks with confidence. When you know that no single setback can destroy your security, you can pursue opportunities more aggressively because you're not risking everything on any single venture. Seneca discovered that diversification actually enables rather than restricts bold action. When he knew his basic security was protected through multiple income sources and asset types, he could invest substantial resources in new opportunities without jeopardizing his family's welfare. The safety net made risk-taking more strategic rather than desperate. The quarterly risk assessment should also include stress testing your current situation. What would happen if your largest client disappeared tomorrow? How would you respond if your primary skill became obsolete due to technological change? Could you maintain your basic lifestyle if your most profitable income source was interrupted for 6 months? These aren't pleasant questions, but answering them honestly helps you identify vulnerabilities before they become crises. Seneca's approach to diversification was active rather than passive. He didn't just spread his resources randomly across different options, but strategically chose complementary activities that could support each other during different types of challenges. Your consulting skills might help you understand investment opportunities. Your investment income might provide security while you develop new business ventures. In essence, This systematic protection of your assets leads naturally to the crucial skill of knowing when to abandon unsuccessful strategies and redirect your resources toward better opportunities. The Stoic risk assessment method transforms diversification from fearful hedge betting into confident strategic planning that enhances your ability to pursue ambitious goals safely. Secret number 8. Apply the Marcus Aurelius loss-cutting decision framework. You're staring at your investment portfolio on your phone while sitting in a Boston coffee shop, watching a stock you bought 6 months ago continue its slow descent toward worthlessness. You purchased shares in what seemed like an innovative tech company, but subsequent earnings reports have revealed fundamental problems with their business model. The stock has lost 40% of its value, and every financial instinct tells you to sell before it drops further. But you can't bring yourself to accept the loss. You keep telling yourself it will recover, that selling now would mean admitting you were wrong, that patient investors eventually get rewarded for holding through difficult periods. This psychological trap would have been immediately recognizable to Marcus Aurelius, who, as emperor, had to make countless decisions where admitting error and changing course was essential for the survival of the Roman Empire. He developed what we can call the Stoic loss-cutting framework, a systematic approach to recognizing when persistence becomes destructive and new information requires abandoning previous commitments. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his personal reflections, "When someone points out that you have been wrong, that you have made an error in your reasoning, be grateful for the correction. It shows that you are capable of learning, that you can improve your judgment. This is not something to be ashamed of, it is something to celebrate." This perspective transformed cutting losses from an admission of failure into evidence of wisdom and adaptability. The emperor understood that holding on to failing investments, unsuccessful strategies, or deteriorating situations often stems from what modern psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy, the mistaken belief that resources already invested justify continued investment even when future prospects are poor. Marcus Aurelius recognized this tendency in himself and developed practical methods to overcome it. Here's how to implement the Marcus Aurelius loss-cutting framework in your financial decision-making. Every month, conduct what he called the Fresh Eyes Review, evaluating each of your significant financial commitments as if you were encountering them for the first time, without the emotional weight of your previous decisions. For each investment, business venture, or financial commitment, ask yourself this crucial question. If I had the money I currently have invested in this opportunity sitting in cash today, would I choose to put it into this same investment? If the answer is no, you should seriously consider cutting your losses regardless of how much you've already invested or how painful the recognition of error might feel. Marcus Aurelius applied this principle far beyond financial investments. When military campaigns weren't producing results, when political alliances proved counterproductive, or when administrative policies created unintended consequences, he forced himself to evaluate whether continuing the current course served the empire's interests or merely protected his ego from admitting mistakes. The framework requires separating your identity from your decisions. Many people treat investment losses or business failures as personal character judgments rather than simple miscalculations based on incomplete information. Marcus Aurelius understood that even the most careful analysis can lead to poor outcomes when circumstances change or when your initial assumptions prove incorrect. The monthly review process includes what Marcus Aurelius called information updating. Since you made your original decision, what new information has emerged? Have market conditions changed? Has the competitive landscape shifted? Have you learned something about your own preferences, capabilities, or risk tolerance that affects whether this commitment still makes sense. This isn't about becoming impulsive or abandoning every investment that faces temporary challenges. Marcus Aurelius distinguished between short-term volatility and fundamental deterioration. A stock that drops due to general market conditions might recover, but a company whose core business model is being disrupted by technological change probably won't return to previous valuations. The framework also applies to non-financial commitments that affect your wealth-building capacity. Perhaps you've been spending years developing expertise in a field that's becoming obsolete, or you've been pursuing a business strategy that worked in the past but no longer fits current market conditions. Marcus Aurelius would have viewed clinging to outdated approaches as a form of harmful stubbornness rather than admirable persistence. One practical tool from the emperor's decision-making process involves setting predetermined criteria for cutting losses before you make initial commitments. When you buy a stock, start a business venture, or pursue a new income strategy, establish specific conditions that would trigger a reassessment. This might be a particular percentage loss, a timeline for achieving certain milestones, or external changes that would affect the opportunity's viability. Marcus Aurelius also emphasized the importance of learning extraction, ensuring that even failed investments or unsuccessful ventures provide valuable knowledge for future decisions. When you cut losses, spend time analyzing what you can learn from the experience. What assumptions proved incorrect? What warning signs did you miss? How can you improve your evaluation process for similar future opportunities? The emperor discovered that people who become skilled at cutting losses actually take more calculated risks over time, not fewer. When you know you can recognize and respond to deteriorating situations quickly, you're more willing to pursue promising opportunities because you're confident in your ability to limit downside exposure. The loss-cutting framework includes emotional preparation for the discomfort of admitting error. Marcus Aurelius regularly reminded himself that changing course based on new information demonstrates wisdom rather than weakness. In his view, only foolish people never change their minds, and only ineffective leaders never abandon failing strategies. The monthly review should also consider opportunity costs, what other investments or ventures could benefit from the resources you're currently committing to underperforming assets. Sometimes the best reason to cut losses isn't that your current investment will definitely fail, but that you've identified better opportunities that deserve your capital and attention. This disciplined approach to decision-making leads naturally to the final essential practice: maintaining healthy detachment from your possessions to prevent them from becoming sources of anxiety rather than tools for freedom. The Marcus Aurelius loss-cutting framework transforms admitting error from a painful defeat into a strategic advantage that improves your long-term wealth-building effectiveness. Secret number 9. Conduct monthly possession ownership reviews. You're standing in your walk-in closet in San Francisco, surrounded by thousands of dollars worth of clothes you rarely wear, expensive gadgets you barely use, and luxury items that once brought excitement but now feel like burdens requiring constant attention. Your designer handbag sits unused because you're afraid someone might damage it. Your expensive watch needs special insurance and careful maintenance. Your high-end electronics require regular updates and create anxiety about theft or breakage. You realize that instead of these possessions serving you, you've become their caretaker, spending mental energy and financial resources protecting things that were supposed to improve your life. This realization would have immediately resonated with Epictetus, who developed the most counterintuitive wealth practice of all the ancient Stoics, the monthly possession ownership review. Having experienced both slavery and freedom, Epictetus understood that the relationship between people and their belongings often reverses without anyone noticing. The owner becomes owned, the possessor becomes possessed. Epictetus lived this principle personally. One evening, he heard a thief breaking into his home. Instead of feeling violated or angry, he calmly observed the intruder take his prized silver lamp. The next day, rather than buying an expensive replacement, Epictetus purchased a simple clay lamp and reflected, "You can only lose what you have." His point wasn't that beautiful objects are worthless, but that anxiety about protecting possessions often costs more than the possessions themselves are worth. The monthly possession ownership review requires honest evaluation of the true relationship between you and everything you own. This isn't about embracing poverty or rejecting material comfort, but about ensuring that your belongings enhance rather than complicate your life. The goal is maintaining what Epictetus called easy ownership, enjoying nice things without being enslaved by them. Here's how to implement the Stoic possession review. On the last Sunday of each month, spend an hour walking through your living space and honestly assessing the cost-benefit relationship of your major possessions. Consider not just the financial cost, but the mental and emotional energy required to maintain, protect, and worry about each item. Start with possessions that require ongoing attention or create anxiety. This might include expensive electronics that need regular updates, luxury items that require special insurance, delicate objects that restrict how you use your space, or status symbols that demand constant maintenance. For each item, ask yourself whether the pleasure or utility you derive from ownership exceeds the total cost of keeping it. Epictetus emphasized that the hidden costs of ownership often overwhelm the obvious benefits. That expensive car might provide transportation and status, but it also requires premium insurance, careful parking, regular maintenance, and constant worry about damage or theft. The designer furniture might be beautiful, but it restricts how you live in your space and creates stress when guests might damage it. The review process includes what Epictetus called replacement assessment, honestly evaluating whether cheaper alternatives would provide 90% of the benefit for 50% of the cost and anxiety. Could you accomplish the same goals with simpler, more durable, less theft-worthy alternatives? This isn't about choosing inferior options, but about recognizing when expensive versions create problems that outweigh their advantages. Next, examine possessions you rarely use despite their value. Expensive exercise equipment gathering dust, formal clothing for occasions that never materialize, specialized tools for hobbies you've abandoned, or books you'll never read again all represent capital tied up in items that aren't improving your daily experience. Epictetus would have viewed these as examples of resources poorly allocated. The possession review also includes an emotional attachment assessment. Some items that aren't particularly valuable or useful become sources of stress because of sentimental associations or imagined future needs. Epictetus taught that healthy detachment from possessions doesn't mean being emotionless, but rather avoiding the anxiety that comes from confusing things with identity or security. Consider the maintenance burden of your current possessions. How much time do you spend cleaning, organizing, protecting, or worrying about your belongings? Epictetus found that many people spend so much energy managing their possessions that they have little time or mental space for relationships, creativity, or personal development. The goal of ownership should be enhancing your capacity for meaningful activities, not consuming it. The monthly review should identify possessions that align with what Epictetus called preferred simplicity. Items that genuinely improve your daily experience without creating disproportionate demands on your attention or resources. These might include quality tools that help you work more effectively, comfortable furniture that enhances your rest, or durable clothing that serves multiple purposes. Epictetus also practiced gratitude-based ownership, appreciating nice things when you have them while maintaining the psychological freedom to lose them without devastation. This perspective allows you to enjoy luxury when it's available while avoiding the anxiety that comes from depending on external objects for happiness or self-worth. The possession ownership review includes practical decluttering decisions. Items that fail the cost-benefit analysis should be sold, donated, or given to people who would use them more effectively. This isn't just about creating physical space, but about freeing mental and financial resources for opportunities that better serve your actual priorities. Epictetus discovered that people who regularly evaluate their possessions objectively make better purchasing decisions going forward. When you understand the true cost of ownership, you become more selective about what you acquire, focusing on items that provide lasting value rather than temporary satisfaction. The review process should also consider what Epictetus called opportunity costs of accumulation, recognizing that money and mental energy spent on possessions could often be invested more effectively in experiences, relationships, skills, or financial assets that compound over time. Ultimately, this leads us to implementing all 9 Stoic wealth secrets as an integrated system for building lasting prosperity and genuine freedom. The monthly possession ownership review transforms your relationship with material goods from unconscious accumulation to deliberate curation that supports rather than complicates your pursuit of a wealthy life. Your next steps to Stoic financial freedom. You've just learned 9 timeless secrets that transformed ordinary Romans into masters of both material prosperity and spiritual freedom. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while maintaining inner peace. Seneca built vast wealth while serving the common good. Epictetus found liberation despite starting as a slave. These weren't accidents or lucky circumstances. They were the natural results of applying systematic wisdom to the practical challenges of creating and managing resources. The path forward requires understanding that these 9 practices work together as an integrated system, not isolated techniques. Your daily gratitude practice provides the foundation of abundance thinking that makes your time value assessments more strategic. The weekly enough test prevents the lifestyle inflation that would undermine your financial freedom strategy. Your patience tracking sustains the long-term perspective necessary for effective diversification and loss-cutting decisions. The possession ownership reviews ensure that your growing wealth enhances rather than complicates your life. Start with secret number 1 tomorrow morning. Before checking your phone or rushing into your daily routine, spend 5 minutes acknowledging 3 specific forms of wealth you already possess. This simple practice will shift your entire approach to financial decision-making from scarcity to strategic abundance. Within a week, you'll notice yourself negotiating more confidently, spending more deliberately, and identifying opportunities you previously missed. Add 1 new secret each week until you're practicing all 9 consistently. The ancient Stoics understood that lasting transformation happens through sustained daily practices rather than dramatic weekend overhauls. By month 3, you'll have a complete system for building wealth that increases rather than compromises your freedom, relationships, and values. The most important insight from 2,000 years of Stoic wisdom is this: True wealth isn't about accumulating the most money or possessions. It's about creating enough security to make choices based on your principles rather than your fears, enough abundance to be generous rather than hoarding, and enough wisdom to distinguish between what enhances your life and what merely feeds your ego. These practices will serve you whether you're starting your first job or managing substantial assets, whether you're launching a business or planning retirement, or whether you're navigating financial challenges or optimizing existing success. The Stoics proved that wisdom about money and resources transcends specific economic conditions because it's based on timeless principles of human psychology and practical decision-making. Your wealthy life, rich in both material resources and meaningful relationships, abundant in both financial security and personal freedom, begins with the next choice you make. Will you scroll past this wisdom like countless other pieces of advice? Or will you implement these ancient secrets that have guided successful people for over 2 millennia? The Stoics would remind you that you already have everything you need to begin building genuine prosperity. You have a mind capable of making better decisions, relationships that can support your growth, and access to opportunities that previous generations never imagined. The question isn't whether you can afford to pursue wealth. It's whether you can afford not to apply these time-tested principles to create the life you truly want. If this video has shown you a better way to think about money, success, and true prosperity, subscribe to the Stoic Vivu channel for more ancient wisdom applied to modern life. Like this video to help others discover these powerful practices, and share it with anyone who could benefit from the Stoic approach to building lasting wealth. Your journey to Stoic financial freedom starts now. The ancient masters are waiting to guide you toward a life of genuine abundance.